So today was a big day, and I wanted to capture. There's so much that happened today. The garage space is now empty. I sold the Monster, which is kind of cool. I wanted to. It's funny when I probably end up getting around to uploading these, the order won't make much sense, but it was a big day. I'm really glad to have the Monster out. One of my, there's always a financial concern, and I kind of leapt into getting this. We're, doing fine financially, but it's good to have the money in the bank account. And it's really nice to be done with selling the down bike, because we had, it was almost 2-3 times a day I'd get some inquiry. I used Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and Cycle Trader, and I would get dozens of inquiries from Facebook Marketplace, but it was always like, is this still available? And then a person would respond, or they'd ask 2 or 3 stupid questions. It's a total waste of time. So I'm really glad to be done with that. Yeah, it's really nice to not have to deal with that shit anymore. But hey, so we also got room in the garage, and the Monster's gone. Cool thing is too, the guy we sold it to was seemed like a really decent guy. He says he wants to use it for a track, which is awesome. That's the Viking send-off Ducati should have, right? I got $2,300 for it. I was asking $25. Probably could have held out for a little bit more, but I just wanted to get out of here. Yeah, so I just wanted to get rid of it, and it's gone, so that's great. And then, kind of out of the blue, I decided to go IMS. It's the International Motorcycle Show out in Long Beach Motorcycle Show. That was a freaking awesome time. My dad and I went. We went to. We just went out of the blue. I just was like, hey, I'm gonna go do this thing. I got a couple dollars off admission, and boy, what a freaking awesome show. The cool thing is, first of all, the trend, I think, for motorcycles, at least for someone like me, who is, let's face it, a youngish person who will be buying motorcycles in the future, everything was like the kind of bike I would want to own. I love naked bikes. I love sports bikes, but they don't have to be hyper sports or super sports or super bikes, whatever you want to call them. So sporty, lightweight bikes was really appealing to me. A couple things I saw that I was just ecstatic about. Suzuki brought the SV650 back, and they have this cafe racer variant that's like really, really nice. So I was pretty jazzed to see both of those. I used to own an SV, and it was a cool bike. Every manufacturer had something along the line. They had a naked twin. I think the biggest surprise for me was the Ducati Super Sport. And I gotta say, I'm already a Ducati fanboy, right? But I've been thinking, as I've owned 2 Monsters now, and I really like bikes that are very practical. This isn't very practical, but sometimes you gotta just kind of have a passion project. But I've been thinking, like, having a Monster but with a small fairing would be kind of a good idea. And I noticed Ducati came out with the Super Sport, and I've been like looking at it like, all right, this is kind of a cool idea. It's a full fairing bike, but it's got a little bit of the upright handlebars, which is another feature I like, where you're not in the race position with your butts in the air like on this thing. Sorry, we love you, but having that slightly relaxed but a little bit forward riding position, that's a really cool thing. So I was like, that Super Sport looks pretty solid. And then I went, and it was way better than I thought, because it's not, my perception was it was more of like a touring bike, so it was a little bit bigger. And the reality was, talking to the guy, one of the Ducati reps there, he was saying they really started with the Monster and they put a fairing on it, which is kind of what I had been thinking I would almost want to do with my Monster, which I know that's sacrilegious, right? So I don't need the I don't need a lecture from everyone. I understand a monster with a fairing is a sacrilegious thing, which is why you would call it a super sport. And before I bought the 916, I was actually flirting with the idea of my next bike being a 90s or 2000s Ducati 900 SS or 750 SS, whatever I could get. Nothing of those were like really super, like, they weren't quite as tantalizing as like a 916 was. But going up to the Super Sport, the 2018s, I think they came out in 2017. I hadn't really seen one up close. I got to sit on it, and it's not a big touring kind of thing. It really is a monster with a bit of fairing on the front. The fairing is also like, it's not even substantial. You know, a lot of fairings have like the plastic molding will come out, and then like we'll have points where it mounts in. So they're really solid, like thick things. This was not. This was almost like an old school, like where they would just put a fiberglass shell on the front. I mean, it's fitted and molded, but it's pretty sweet. It's super lightweight. Like I said, it's a monster with a fairing. If you ask me, it's like 100% the bike I would want. Like if I had $20,000 today, and you were like, you have to go buy a bike, I'd be like, Super Sport, 100%. That's awesome. The other cool thing is Ducati's got this program where they are running, they have like, I was calling it a Fitbit for your motorcycle. So it tells you like the pace that you ride at and how much horsepower, your fuel economy and all that. So she'll show you your route. Kind of cool stuff. I'm a data geek. I really like analyzing. And you know, I have a Fitbit. I like all that stuff. I know I don't look like I use my Fitbit, which is kind of like par for the course, I guess, for most Fitbit people. But I do like that kind of stuff, and so that's a cool feature thing Ducati's got. The surprise at IMS was the Suzuki Katana. I always thought it was kind of a silly thing. I didn't think anyone would be like super into, you know. And to me, I'm obviously way too young to remember the original Katana. I remember Katanas of the late 2000s being dorkmobiles, right? Like they hadn't been updated. I think they went on a 15-year run without any kind of style updates whatsoever. But they had a throwback, and I could see why people kind of liked the one that came out in the 80s. But the one that they had on the showroom floor was just jaw-dropping. It was one of the most stunning bikes I've seen in a while. And I'm not usually one for the 80s RoboCop weirdo sci-fi looking bikes. This thing looked cool though, man. It was cool stuff. So IMS was a blast. There were I don't know, I can't estimate crowds, but there could have been 5,000-10,000 motorcycles in the parking lot. I mean, certainly in the thousands. And so my dad and I were just kind of able to walk amongst the sea and talk about what we saw. The showroom floor was amazing. There were tens of thousands of people there. Everyone was super into motorcycles, and it's just kind of a community I really like, you know. So I had a really good time, and love spending time with my dad. Him and I see eye to eye on most things, especially motorcycles. So yeah, it was a really good day, and I wanted to capture it as part of the log. Still flirting with an idea on what to call the log, but here it is. So as far as this thing goes, I haven't had much progress beyond the progress I reported in an earlier video. I did get a couple more parts in. I got a carbon fiber rear tire hugger that I'm going to be putting on it because it needs a tire hugger. I think it'll help it stay cleaner. I do like the exposed tire look for it, but it'll be good to have. I think it'll keep the tail a little bit tidier, cleaner, you know, less asphalt and shit. Not much else to report on it. The big thing was, you know, this week became all about getting rid of the monster. So the monster's gone, and hopefully I'll see it again, maybe on a racetrack. But for now, you know, we're back to this. Hopefully I'll have some time in the next few days, and I think the next step is going to be rebuilding. Rebuilding is too much of a word, but putting the throttle body back together, putting the fittings on. The fuel tank is in such a condition. I think it's going to need more. I think it's going to need a lot of work, but I do want to hear this thing run. So I may assemble it with the fuel pump out of the tank and see if I can find a way to feed the fuel into the tank. I may look back on this recording and laugh at my aspiration, but yeah, try to, I don't know, take the fuel out of a fuel can, run a hose up to the fuel pump, pump it in, and put some fresh gas in there and see if I can get this beast to fire up. Before I do all that, there's a bit of things I have to do. Like I said, reassemble the throttle body, obviously, and then the other big concern would be I want to squirt some oil in especially the vertical head. Just open up those inspection plates, get some oil in there that's fresh, just see if it'll turn over. So yeah, that's about it. And so I guess I'll sign off from this one.